Cyclone closes in on the Jaffna Peninsula. Doctors' strike hampers operations in hospitals. Variety of dye banned following deaths of heart patients at the National Hospital. Committee to probe the matter.
A very good evening everyone and welcome to Primetime News live on News First. I'm Mahina Bongzo.
Good evening, I'm Shahan Jarampati. Let's take a look at our stories in detail.
The Department of Meteorology says that the Nada cyclonic storm that is active around the Bay of Bengal area will pass within close proximity to the Jaffna Peninsula in the coming hours.
The cyclone is located in the Bay of Bengal 400 kilometers east of Maldives. It will not move directly towards Sri Lanka. This is moving in a northwestern direction. We need to be cautious about the seas. The northern seas, the sea area from Mannar to Batticaloa, and the eastern seas will be rough during this time.
In addition, heavy showers and strong winds can be experienced in the north, north central and eastern provinces. The Met Department adds that the seas of Trincomalee, Mannar and Kankasanture will be rough, while the sea waves could rise to approximately 3 meters. However, Newsfirst correspondents in Jaffna state that there is no rainfall in the area at present. The Nada cyclonic storm is to pass through Tamil Nadu at midnight tomorrow.
In Parliament today, the JVP called for a special investigation into alleged irregularities which are said to have taken place at the Ministry of External Affairs during the tenure of the previous government.
During the previous administration, the Foreign Ministry, I apologize for saying this, had been transformed into a Ministry of Thugs. It could not be found as to who the Foreign Minister was. There were hotel bills of 2.5 million for a day. Have investigations been conducted in this regard? Who were the officials who approved this? This is a ministry which watched pornographic films at the expense of the government's tax money. When they broke their legs while on unofficial trips in Australia for other purposes, a sum of 10.9 million rupees of the taxpayers' money was spent. This is shameful. Is this Swaziland? Shouldn't these be investigated? Doesn't the country need to be told? Shouldn't those responsible be punished? Who paid these bills?
There are
other matters in which in the foreign films there are some scenes which the public performance thing violates our culture, they ban it. But here it is supposed to be some politicians goes abroad and watches blue films from our government money. They have a special legislation brought to punish those politicians if this is true.
With the intention of isolating the country, Mahinda Rajapaksa's government had spent 2.3 billion rupees for overseas tours of the president and his family for just 2 years between 2012 and 2014. Even the youngest son went to Japan in 2014 at a cost of 2.68 million rupees of the government's money. A new house was bought on rent in Los Angeles at a time when there wasn't a single consul general. A sum of 27,098,653 rupees had been spent on maintenance for that house. Several investigations are being held now. I personally examined the documents as to who approved these payments. 2 members of the army have also been sent on this overseas trip for the security of Gotabaya Rajapaksa's son. A lobbying firm was hired between 2009 and 14 in the United States for a sum of over 339 billion rupees under Sajin Diwas Gunawardena. Most of this was approved by Ajit Niwad Cabral. Professor GL Piris is the one who should be held responsible for all of this.
I propose that we appoint a parliamentary select committee during this working committee meeting itself to conduct a special investigation on these matters at the Foreign Ministry from between 2010 and 2015. We have no objection. If someone proposes it, I suppose you could get it done.
One wrong thing does not make the other wrong things right. Do not try to evade the problem.
Yes, I agree with you. Please sit. We have looked into the bond issue of the central bank, but this time we will hand over the task of investigating the buildings which were brought in Brazil and New York by the central bank.
The Government Medical Officers Association launched an island-wide strike action today in protest against several proposals made in the 2017 budget. The strike action severely inconvenienced patients at government hospitals. The GMOA warned today that failure to provide a solution would result in continuous strike action. Several patients who had lined up at the National Hospital in Colombo since dawn to obtain medication had to turn back empty-handed. Activities of several units, including outpatient treatment at the hospital, were hampered due to the 24-hour token strike action, which commenced at 8 this morning.
It is the people who have to suffer because of their strikes. I will have to die without my insulin tomorrow. Will the doctors come forward to feed my wife and children? Doctors and politicians are both the same. They get all the comfort of their facilities while we have to suffer.
It is just like during the colonial rule. Even the free medication is not being given properly. I've been travelling from Ambilipiti since 10 last night. I cannot see from both eyes. I came alone.
While emergency services were in effect at the National Hospital and other government hospitals including the National Cancer Institute took a stand not to take part in the strike action.
Services at the accident ward and intensive care unit as well as surgeries are functioning as usual. Bypass surgeries are also being carried out unhindered. Essential surgeries are also being carried out.
Doctors at the Kandy General Hospital, which functions as the main hospital for the central province, refrained from outpatient treatment and clinical services. The strike action was also prevalent at the Dikoya Hospital, which is frequently visited by estate communities for treatment. Though treatment for kidney patients was unhindered at the Anuradhapura Teaching Hospital today, daily clinic and outpatients treatment were hampered.
The executive committee will reconvene tomorrow and review the trade union action. Thereafter, we will decide what steps need to be taken to express our protest. There is a risk that a massive trade union campaign will affect the island from the medical sector as well as other sectors. We will continue our campaign till we win the rights of the patients. This is the first time that doctors are engaging in a strike in relation to budget proposals. They have done this without any discussions. The chairman of the GMOA spoke with me this morning and said that he sent a letter, but he only called me last evening to say that they are going ahead with the strike. This is not the strength of trade unions. We can take stern action than these trade unions, but what will happen? If the protest extends for even one day, then it will affect the people. I am not saying that they don't have issues. I am saying that these issues can be solved through discussions. Some are technical issues. The government is saying that people protesting against the budget is wrong. They say doctors and students protesting affects the people. We have several questions for the government. Is the decision taken to privatize education correct? Is it correct to abolish free health and bring in a health insurance scheme? Is it correct to impose never-ending taxes on the people, slashing pensions, changing labour laws and robbing the EPF? Are these correct? If these are wrong, then the people have a right to protest. Before the government criticizes this or analyzes this, they should review the budget that they have presented.
Meanwhile, private bus and three-wheel unions have decided to launch a continuous strike from midnight tomorrow. The protest strike is being launched demanding that the newly increased motor traffic fine be removed.
A program was held today at the Kaduala bus stand to promote awareness on this strike.
We clearly request the government to remove the newly imposed fine within the next few hours and reinstate the previous fine, which was 550 rupees. If not, it is clear that this strike will be in effect across the island from midnight tomorrow. We have no trust in Gamanu Wijeratne. He betrayed this fight. The fines will not increase. The budget does not have the legal right to increase the fine to 25,000 rupees or to increase the fine by 25 cents. Our bus operators have been misled by certain groups. This is a political conspiracy. The issue that has arisen at the moment is the issue of overtaking from the left, but I have submitted the relevant facts to the cabinet and received its approval. This is not something that will come into effect from tomorrow because the Motor Traffic Act must be subjected to amendments. A certain amount of time is required for the Act to be amended. It is when making such amendments that the Auditor General's Department and other departments along with the Motor Traffic Department will collectively decide on these amendments. It is also at this moment that they will then decide on whether to implement spot fines or whether these offences should be brought before court. Therefore, there is no need for people to jump into conclusions as if the law is to be enforced from tomorrow.
Meanwhile, the chairman of the Sri Lanka Transport Board says that in the event private buses refuse to operate on the 2nd of December, the board is prepared to face such a situation. Chairman of the SLTB, Ramal Siriwardana, said that buses will be in operation from tomorrow so as to avoid any difficulties faced by passengers, and that leave granted to all bus drivers, conductors have been cancelled. The SLTB also notes that leave for technical staff has also been cancelled for a week, commencing from the 1st of December.
A number of protests were held across the island today.
A group of students of the Peradeniya University engaged in a protest blocking one lane of the Galha Junction. They protested against the use of tear gas on members of the Inter-University Students' Federation yesterday. The students of the Rohini University also engaged in a protest blocking the Tangol Road against the tear gas attack on university students. The students engaged in the protest for over an hour before dispersing. The students of the Rajarata University protested against the tear gas attack and against the budget opposite the main gate of the university. The trade union collective of the Ceylon Electricity Board engaged in a protest today as well, opposite the Superintendent's office of the Central Province. The protest was carried out citing a number of reasons, including the salary discrepancies.
What is the real story behind all these token strikes and demonstrations?
The National Unity Alliance made their opinion clear today.
What we see now are strikes and protests. The people cannot move about freely. They have begun to misuse the freedom achieved on the 8th of January. We can see there is a conspiracy that is taking place. We spoke on this time and time again. It is a government that needs to be held responsible for the strikes and dramas of Udaya Manpila and Mahinda Rajapaksa. They said that all those who committed theft will be arrested. What is taking place now? Arrests are made. But who is being arrested? If those who committed theft are arrested, the funds from Seychelles and Dubai claimed, the houses overseas repossessed and thereafter sold, this government can remove the VAT. They said such things. But what are they doing now? Those who use a vehicle for 147,000 rupees are arrested. But those who committed large-scale theft are protected by the government. What is the deal that the government has with the Rajapaksa family?
You're watching Primetime News. Issues surrounding the taxes imposed on the EPF was raised in Parliament today by parliamentarian Kehelia Rambukwala.
It's important to note that the EPF has been the biggest contributor, 38% on an average, been the biggest contributor for bonds and bond issues. You are the custodian of 3 million people of the EPF contributors and the beneficiaries. When you say notional tax, at source, on the funds, they deduct 10% as withholding tax. And that goes on over a period of 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. You calculate it and you deduct that and you take that to the treasury.
The trustee, the central bank.
Yes.
It is under my vigilance.
Yes.
And as regard to the imposition of the taxes, now the commitment toward the worker has to be performed by the government. There is no, there is no doubt about it. Because now when 8% is contributed by the worker, then the 12% is contributed by the employer. and the money is given to the employee with an interest of 12%. So that commitment is there. That commitment is
That
there.
is exactly
so
the commitment
that
that
will not be varied by imposition of any tax outside it.
The notional tax is a tax that is being deducted at the source. Now, Finance Minister is suggesting that to be confiscated, in other words. That will not be taken into account. Right? That 10% that have been deducted over the period of time is completely taken in to the treasury, and you are imposing another 14% tax, which amounts to a 24% of tax on the workers' money. And that will eventually result at least 2% less in their interest income on the years to come. So, Mr. Minister, I am urging you today, if you can move this amendment to take off this or give credit to this 10%, which is a usual thing. You cannot get out of this responsibility of looking after and looking into areas where they have robbed, in fact, the workers' money, hard-earned money, where all of us, all of the people working class has contributed.
The launch of the Sri Lanka USA Business Council and the Members Forum of Business Councils was held in Colombo last evening.
The event organised by the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce saw the participation of Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs Dr. Harsha De Silva, Ambassador for USA in Sri Lanka Atul Keshup, and members representing the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce.
This government is fully committed, 100% committed to ensure that we create a society that treats every individual the same way. So that we will ensure is a foundation on which Sri Lanka's next phase of growth will be built. The government of Sri Lanka welcomes the new leadership of the United States, and we look forward in earnest to build on the excellent platform that we have already created during the last 2 years of our close engagement and cooperation with the US. Among the other ambitious measures that we intend to work on together with the United States include greater utilization of US tariff preference arrangements involving possible mechanisms to obtain preferential market access for competitive Sri Lankan products and services, building capacities to export food items to the US, and most importantly, mobilizing support for Sri Lanka's goal to serve as a regional service and financial hub.
In an exclusive interview with Newsfirst, USA Ambassador Atul Keshup shared these thoughts on the new administration which is taking shape in USA.
President about to take office in a couple of weeks. Do you think we could expect radical changes to the foreign policy system that exists between US and Sri Lanka?
Well, first of all, we have a fantastic relationship between the American people and the Sri Lankan people. We admire, Americans, we admire what the Sri Lankan people have done. You voted in free and fair and democratic elections for reconciliation, for unity, for freedom, for democracy, for human rights. And as a result of that, I feel that recently our relations have hit an all-time high. A nation's foreign policy is based on interests and values. And American interests certainly are clear, and American values are clear. We are always attracted to countries that believe in democracy, freedom, reconciliation, peace, and we would like to be part of that. We would like to have a very friendly relationship with the people of Sri Lanka. But I will say that when the American people look at Sri Lanka, they look at a country that is getting back on track, heading in a peaceful and prosperous and new direction.
You said that relations between US and Sri Lanka are at an all-time high, but the policies and values of the current administration could be quite contrast, if I'm not mistaken in saying, with the administration that is to take office next month. Do you think we could anticipate any changes in the relations that we've already built thus far?
Let's see how things go. Obviously, we're in a period of transition right now, but American foreign policy historically has always reflected a consistency based on what's good for the American people, good for the American Republic, and obviously reflects our values as a people. So let's see how it goes, because in any transition it would be inappropriate for me to sort of say what the new government's going to do. Let President-elect Trump get his people in place, let him get sworn in on January 20th, and we'll take it from there.
Still on local news, the national ceremony to commemorate the elimination of malaria in Sri Lanka was held in Colombo this evening.
Representatives of the health sector and the World Health Organization were present for the event today. Those who contributed to achieve the certification of Sri Lanka as a malaria-free country were felicitated at the ceremony.
Sri Lanka became the second country in quick succession to Maldives in the Southeast Asia region to achieve malaria-free status. I cannot overstate the magnitude of this achievement. My request today is to see that you maintain this resolve. Unless we act wisely and rapidly, Sri Lanka has a high risk of re-establishment of malaria. And I commit WHO's full support to Sri Lanka's ongoing anti-malaria campaign. Sri Lanka's achievement is an example of how malaria control can be done right and how countries can be freed of this burden.
It is said that today malaria occurs in nearly 100 countries worldwide, exacting a huge toll on human health and imposing a heavy social and economic burden in many developing countries. I believe that WHO has estimated in 2015 there were 214 million new cases of malaria, resulting 438,000 deaths. We are lucky to achieve much success in fighting the disease. Visionary planning and much contribution and commitment by dedicated men and women over a century has enabled our nation achieve the final goal while also contributing to the reduction of the global burden of malaria, especially the Southeast Asian region.
WHO Regional Director for Southeast Asia, Dr. Poonam Ketrapal Singh, presented the certificate officially declaring Sri Lanka a malaria-free country to Health Minister Dr. Rajitha Senaratne. The World Health Organization officially certified Sri Lanka on having eliminated malaria on the 5th of September this year. The announcement of Sri Lanka's achievement was made at the WHO Southeast Asia Region's annual Regional Committee meeting, which was held in Sri Lanka in the presence of health ministers and senior health officials from 11 member states.
Based on the instructions of the Minister of Health, a 3-member committee has been appointed to probe the deaths of 4 patients who died after undergoing angiogram test at the cardiac unit of the National Hospital.
One of the patients that passed away following the angiogram is A.M. Somaratne. He was admitted to the cardiac unit of the National Hospital on the 18th of this month. Tests revealed that there had been 3 blood clots in his heart.
He was awake and in good spirits when I visited him in the afternoon. He even asked me to bring hoppers for breakfast. He said he experienced a pain when he got off the bus. He said that he was being transferred to another ward to remove the dye. The doctor then asked me to leave, but we followed him to the next ward. 2.5 hours later it was done. When we came back at 5, he was screaming in pain. The doctors surrounded him and brought him back to normal. He even vomited.
Specialist Dr. Lakshmi Somatunga, the chairman of the committee appointed to probe these deaths, has already called for the dye being used in the angiogram test to be replaced. However, the cause of the death has been cited as an issue that occurred within the left lung.
We have removed the dye that was used in the angiogram in order to ascertain if there was a fault in it which led to these deaths. We have provided a new dye for this purpose. We cannot rush to say what the cause was. The National Hospital branch of the GMOA is ready to extend their support for this investigation. We are prepared to provide data that the Ministry of Health does not receive. We can reveal the truth.
Views were also expressed in this regard during the cabinet media briefing held today.
We do not know the true cause yet. I have appointed a committee to look into this. They will provide a full report on the issue. I have a doubt whether the dye that was used caused allergic reactions.
Has the dye that you are speaking of been imported before?
No, they were in stock and were released in batches. Even when we being in drugs using tenders, there may be issues with certain batches of drugs. If such issues arise, we immediately withdraw the drugs. These cases were reported from day 1 by 2 doctors. If this happened across 2 days, then we would have withdrawn the drug.
Professional negligence, I think, is underplayed in our society. And the main reason I see for that is the large disparity that exists between the so-called professionals and the people. But in our country, unfortunately, although we say that our literacy rate is 98, 99 or even 100%, I don't know whether intelligence rates are that even close to that, because you see, when you go to a lawyer, and if you even ask a question, what do the lawyers say? They ask him, that should not be the manner in which that one handles citizens who are patients or clients for a lawyer. So what is being discussed in society at the moment is clinical negligence. Now, clinical negligence, if you, for example, there are several acts of parliament that you can deal with for clinical negligence, particularly against medical professionals. Going further, if you can satisfy a court, as you know, in a criminal action, there is a mens rea or a mental element and actus reus, the act. If you can satisfy that someone knowingly and negligently caused the death of someone, that can go up to the very highest levels of a criminal prosecution, where that man may actually end up before a court for charges of manslaughter or even causing the death knowingly. So I think this is a matter that society must look at seriously.
150 years, it is also under threat. Yesterday we highlighted several threats facing the industry. Tonight we delve deeper into this issue.
Ceylon tea is famous for its flavour and quality the world over. In this series we explore the threats to its future. We've already looked at its history and the risk posed by climate change and a government ban on weedicide. But what other political interventions threaten to destroy Sri Lanka's greatest export? In Sri Lanka's 2016 budget, the government announced plans to restrict the size of estates run by regional plantation companies to 5,000 acres. With these estates currently averaging 25,000 acres, this will have a dramatic impact on organisations that claim to be already making losses. The question is how reducing economies of scale of production would benefit the tea industry.
So by splitting up the divisions into 5, you can have a more accountable system. If you have smaller clusters, it will be easier to manage. They've had the land for the last 20 odd years. Why should they be managing the companies if they can't make money? They can't be expecting the government to be giving them handouts when the bad times are there. They have to inbuild that into their economic model.
With higher rates of productivity, smallholders are often held up as an example, despite some exporters questioning the quality of some of the tea that they produce. However, is government subsidy to smallholders unfair?
Yeah, they get more. They got more from the government. Clear the jungle, they give subsidy. They to plant the tea, they give plants, and they give manure subsidy. So they get everything.
Tea, it seems, is undoubtedly political. But government intervention is not the only political force that poses a threat. Some argue union influence is not always in the industry's best interests.
The politics has always been a disturbing element. When the planters and the trade unions don't come to some agreement, there is always unseen hand of government coercing and imposing, indirectly even some mandatory wage increases. Union, unlike any other industry, union is not separate from a political party. So there is a political agenda that drives these movements. So politicians exist because of the voters, and always they'll try to put the interests of the voters in front rather than the interests of the industry.
In October, trade unions helped agree a 50 rupee rise to workers' basic wage, plus a bonus for reaching a 22 kilo target. But how are unions viewed by the people they represent?
அப்படி எதுமே இல்ல. அவங்களுக்கு ஏதாவது வேணும்னா மட்டும் ஃபேக்டரிக்கு வருவாங்க, எங்களை தேடி வருவாங்க வீட்டுக்கு. மற்றபடி நாங்க எது சொன்னாலும் கூட கண்டுக்க மாட்டோம். ஆனா மாசம் மாசம் நாங்க எங்களுக்கு சம்பளத்துல 150 ரூபாய் அவங்களுக்கு தான் கொடுக்கறோம் நாங்க.
In response, Mr. Sivalingam, MP and CWC party leader, claimed the worker was being used as propaganda by anti-union NGOs. The recent increase in wages was eventually agreed after years of negotiation and a wave of estate worker protests, instigated by unions. But many workers remain bitterly disappointed at union failure to agree a higher daily wage, such as the 1,000 rupees originally suggested by unions. Is this disappointment creating distrust between workers, unions and estate management and damaging productivity? Many planters feel tea estate workers get a fair deal and point out that they earn above the average for rural Sri Lankans. However, tea plucker wages vary considerably depending on the season and how many leaves there are to pluck. In part 4, we will see the reality of the tea estate worker's life.
Well, with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of Primetime News. Make sure you join us again tomorrow. I'm Mahina Bongzo.
And I'm Shahan Jarangpati. Good night and take care.